so much for joining us today. My name is Sim. I'm the head of content, at Unlimit. And could you please start us off by introducing yourself and a little bit about what you do?
I'm Laura McCracken. I'm responsible for commerce and payments at Accenture globally.
That's incredible. What's led you to this journey, this current role that you're in, about your previous roles and your interests?
Well, it's been a long, very tumultuous journey, I could say. So I started my career, I don't know if you want the whole full story, but I'm going to give it to you, whether you want it or not. I started my career in accounting, auditing, specifically at KPMG. Then I moved into investment banking. Neither of those worked for me. Auditing wasn't for me. Investment banking, way too full of egos, wasn't for me. And then I got into payments at American Express. So that's when I basically learned my leadership skills, my values. It was a great company. I was there for 10 years, then moved into Citigroup, did similar things, but in Asia Pacific. So at American Express, I was global, and Citigroup, I was Asia, working across 14 markets. Then I moved on the retailer side. So I went to Amazon. And Amazon, I was working from their side, trying to figure out how to optimize payments and optimize accessibility to the website for people even who were maybe underbanked, etc. And then moved on to Facebook. Facebook was a fascinating experience. Now it's called Meta. But at Facebook, it was all about trying to figure out how to A, optimize the payments experience, but B, how do we light up social commerce? So that was a really interesting journey. And we even got into, how do we do, P2P payments through WhatsApp, etc. And lastly, now I'm working with, I went to Wirecard briefly, and Wirecard was a great experience. Whenever you have a train wreck, I don't know if you guys know about Wirecard, but Wirecard was like a massive train wreck, and that I joined 6 months before the whole thing imploded. It was like the Enron of Europe, massive fraud, corporate fraud, and I got there just in time to go through insolvency, etc. And then I was asked to sit on the board and help to figure out how to sell the company. So that was really fun, working with investigators and the FCA and working with BaFin, everybody trying to figure out what happened. How can we improve things for the economy in the future? Make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen again. So whenever you're faced with a challenge, that's actually the best learning opportunity. And then finally, after 2 years of dealing with the fallout of Wirecard, I joined Accenture. And Accenture is giving me the chance to actually work with all people across retail, brands, social media companies, marketplaces, payment companies, and banks to try and figure out how to bring it all together.
Thank you. What an incredible play-by-play of your career path so far. I have heard of Wirecard, but I can't imagine. You must have felt like an investigator, a financial investigator at the time.
I joined, to be honest, there's a two-part story with Wirecard. There was a legitimate business. They had like 100 airlines. I was responsible for fintech. So I was responsible for the likes of Monzo and 26, Revolut, Curve, all of these companies that worked with Wirecard, but there was another part of the business that was fraudulent. And then I got the privilege of trying to figure out those money flows, trying to figure out the fraudulent part of the company and what went wrong, how did that happen, and work with the regulators to figure out the flow of funds. And yeah, it was an interesting story. We could go into in much greater detail at a later point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have no doubt that it was also very much a legitimate business, but I can also imagine the learning experiences and the exposure for anyone along that journey would have been incredible. But the fact that you are at Accenture now is also phenomenal. I think anyone, particularly in London, I'm sure at a global scale as well, but I know all of my friends within London, we've all heard of Accenture. Everyone at some point has been perusing around. What a phenomenal organization to be within. And I would just like to know if you're willing to share what a day in the life is like for somebody at a managing director level working in global e-commerce and payments. What would be your daily routine, or how different is it every single day?
It's awesome. First of all, what I get to do, my job is kind of in three parts. So the first part is thought leadership. Second part is working with business development and origination, basically breakfast, lunch, and dinner with clients, figuring out what they need, and which makes it hard to stay in shape. And third is actually execution, running engagements and making sure that I'm staying close to the client on real engagements where we're trying to future-proof payments for our clients, like retailers and social commerce companies. So those are the three areas. But I would say the most exciting area for me is that thought leadership piece. And I have people around the world who are helping me with the research, helping me with identifying the mega trends, identifying unique, unconventional partnerships, and trying to bring that to life through research, through articles, through conferences, etc. So I really love that thought leadership part of it. And of course, I love spending time with my partners and my clients at any time I get to have it with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It must be like, obviously thought leadership is it's so imperative, but I think it's also very forward thinking as well. And also being in the world of like e-commerce and payments and having fintech experience, it's more and more imperative in our business world now to be progressive in our mindset. So I can imagine all those conversations that you have, they must be so like lucrative in terms of ideology. It must be so exciting.
Well, you learn from every new relationship. And my constant theme throughout my career, which I'm sure we'll touch on later, is unconventional partnerships. And that's about bringing together people that sometimes seem like competitors. They end up being frenemies, and you create amazing things with seemingly disparate industries.
That's amazing. Sorry, I just noticed you have a little cat tottering around as well in the background. So sweet.
Oh, nice. She came to join us. Fantastic.
I absolutely love that. No, thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. I can only imagine how rewarding that must be, that like learning from different experiences, different thought processes, different organizations, and at a global scale as well, must be absolutely phenomenal. So if we could sort of progress slightly, I know that there's a massive preconception when it comes to the world of payments, and particularly with our series where we're speaking specifically with women, because we would like to uplift the number of women that we see within STEM and STEM related industries because of the disparity. I know that I've seen from so many people through conversations in my time in the industry that, like sometimes payments can look really boring, and I don't really understand what a fintech is, and there's so many connotations behind it. But for us, the people that are living and working in it every single day, I find it incredibly exciting. And the people I've spoken to also share the same ethos. But could you please share with us, because of your amazing path that you've had, what inspired you to first enter the industry, and how did you first become interested, and how did you go about exploring that interest?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an interesting question. And I'm going to give you not the answer you're looking for. And that is that I joined American Express not because of the industry, but because of the values. So I'd already been in audit with KPMG. I realized that I loved learning the language of accounting and all that, but it's just not me. I enjoyed my time in investment banking at Lazard Frere, but probably a bit too macho and ego driven for me. Finally, I came to my third job, and I was like, I've got to nail this. I can't keep bouncing around, so I've got to nail this. And I looked for a company that I recognized the brand and the leadership values. And so American Express, first and foremost, was a global brand and great values within the company. Now, but to respond to your question about payments in particular, at first I was bored with payments. I mean, I was like, yeah, brand is great. I love the customer proposition. Everyone understands it and has a feeling for it. But we spent all of our time This is back in the 90s. You can see how old I am. But back in the 90s, it was all about how do we increase our market share? You know, how does American Express get 1% up on MasterCard or Visa? That was our job. Boring, right? But now it's so different. Now, you know, you don't just have the scheme rails. You've got the scheme rails, you've got the banking rails, you've got the blockchain rails that are coming up. And so the world has opened up, and it's really, again, about those unconventional partnerships, really being able to work across omni-channel, work with the retailers in new ways, work with the Apples and the Googles and the Facebooks and the Amazons in new ways. So I find it the most creative space because payments are at the center, right? We're at the center of this whole world. But payments can be through all those different rails that I mentioned. They can be across many different channels, but we are the linchpin.
Very eloquently said. I completely agree. And I think that's often a lot of the messaging that you see, particularly within like financial services, is that, I guess, from a consumer perspective, it may be overlooked, but from a business perspective, you come to learn it is absolutely fundamental. And no, just to reaffirm, you do not share your age. You don't look a day over 30.
Hey, I was there in the early 90s wheeling around the big old Macintosh on a wheelie with a printer attached. No, I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of change.
I can imagine. I think also speaking to other individuals as well throughout this series, it's been so inspiring because so many people speak of how it used to be before, and before alternative methods of finance also came about. So traditional banking, and even things like how male dominated it was, like everyone sits in a suit, and back in the day when people were smoking cigarettes in the boardroom, and yeah,
I remember that. I remember that.
So hearing those stories, it's so interesting because I think you made a very like amazing point when you said you joined because of the values. And one thing I think I see more and more within the industry, and particularly of like the fintech space, or is the ideology and the mentality behind organizations is very progressive now. So you see particularly a lot of younger generations really attracted towards them because they offer a completely different way of working and thinking, and it suits the millennial Gen Z sort of era phenomenally because it is so progressive and it's so interconnected, and they make it very obvious how connected it is to our everyday life because, like you said, payments is at the center of everything that we're doing. Thank you for sharing. But moving on slightly, I was wondering if you were able to sort of share along your journey, particularly where you've seen challenges and it's made you, that you've witnessed or faced, and it may not be directly to yourself, but even colleagues and other women that you've come across. How have you seen female experience develop and evolve over the years and through the industry?
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting one because I come from a military background. So my family I'm American, even though I live in London now and have a global role, but I grew up in America in a military family, and I grew up on a military base of about 20,000 pilots in a town of 5,000 people. So I was surrounded by men all my life. And so what I was able to do, and this is not what you want to do, I'm just saying what I was able to do. So I was able to play the guys game. So when I was in investment banking and when I was in early days of American Express, when people were smoking in the boardroom, I was just participating. You know, I don't smoke any longer, but I did. I did everything. I smoked cigars. I drank whiskey. I mean, I did what I needed to do to fit in. And that's what we did in the old days. This is the early noughties, right? When a woman needs to just fit in. And that's how you rose up. Now and you know, either you did or you didn't. I did. That helped me. Then what happened, I started noticing this queen bee syndrome. And this is what you don't want to fall into as a female, because a lot of times when women get to the top, they feel like, okay, they're limited. This is back in the 90s, even 2000s, where women felt as though, okay, there are a limited number of spaces for us. So therefore, I made it by playing the man's game. I'm here. I don't want to pull other women up because there's only one spot, right? That's the queen bee syndrome. So that's where women typically would get to a certain position and would not try to help others. It's changed. You're going to be happy to hear that in what I see today in the 2010s, 2020s, is that women are now, we've kind of evolved. Organizations are leaning in. And I've seen that throughout my career. I mean, to be honest, from 2000 onward, I felt like organizations were leaning in, trying to find ways of identifying the right talent, having a balanced slate when they're recruiting, and really fostering, the right culture to foster women talent. But then women, once they got into leadership, they started actually helping each other. And that's like a new thing. And that's something we need to learn to do more of.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think I've been very fortunate in the fact that the women that I work with at Unlimited, they are very supportive, but also all of the individuals that I've spoken to throughout our Female Voices series, they're very supportive women. They want to uplift. And it's often because they have also seen what you've said, that sort of mentality. And you can understand why individuals felt that way, because they saw how difficult it was to exist as a woman within the industry before. And so they were concerned. But I love the fact that everyone can sort of see that transitional shift now, that people are trying to uplift. And I think organizations are also taking steps forward to welcome and encourage women and girls and nurture that interest from a younger age. But I think personally, I think it could be happening at a faster rate and more could be done. But that's because it's a passion of mine.
I'll also tell you that, again, I was able to play the man's game, which was, we used to sign deals over a 3 martini lunch. Could do that kind of thing back at Lazard Frere back in the 90s. But when I joined, say, Amazon. So when I joined Amazon, the company was probably more masculine in terms of it was more an INTJ, introverted thinking, sensing and judging. So that was kind of the personality profile. They needed something different. And so I succeeded at Amazon, despite the fact that I was almost opposite to the corporate culture. They needed some of the feminine side of me that I brought to the table. So it was actually a really good experience, I think, for them and me, because I didn't fit the mold, but they wanted someone who could bring out the emotional side, relationships, feeling, etc.
Absolutely. I think it's something that is often quite undervalued. A conversation that we often have is the perception that women just bring along this over emotional, nurturing mentality. But I think it's quite a negative way of looking at it. But when women bring in a different way of thinking, it doesn't mean that it's right or wrong, but it's definitely a different way. And where the industry was lacking that for so long, now it's all the more worthy, because like you said, you bringing in that different energy, that different mindset, it probably revolutionized the way that things were, because they were like, oh, we didn't actually consider maybe doing it that way, or even the way building like a work team ethos. It's so valuable. I see so many girls that are younger than I am, and young women that really aspire and really look up to female leaders within the industry, because it's a different face, and it's also really reassuring that women have the access to also reach that level. But also I love the Myers-Briggs connotation. Absolutely.
I know, I don't know if everyone speaks Myers-Briggs, but yeah, I'm kind of a Myers-Briggs fanatic, and I actually tend to look at every organization. I can put them into the Myers-Briggs bucket.
That's so interesting. I mean, I know my own profile, and I've done a little bit of research into it, but I'm nowhere near as well versed as you are. But no, that's great. Thank you. So in terms of, actually, if we look at females and leadership, what 3 tips would you give to a woman or other females who are becoming leaders in our space and are managing a team?
Well, this almost goes for everybody, not just women, but the number one thing is authenticity. People follow people who are comfortable in their own skin. People follow people who are authentic leaders. So you have to know who you are. You've got to have a strong core, strong values. And without that, I'm sorry, you can't even lead, right? So you've got to start there. Secondly, I would say emotional intelligence is super important. And emotional intelligence to me means that first you have to understand yourself, know yourself, be self-aware, and then have empathy to other people. Try and figure out how to bridge the gap. Try to figure out how to bring out the best in others based upon what you have. So it's self-awareness, empathy brings out this magic of emotional intelligence. Third, when you talk about teams, I would say strengths-based leadership is my mantra. If you haven't read this book, there's a book called First Break the Rules. And that book I bought probably because I love breaking rules. I just love the title. But the truth is, First Break the Rules is all about strengths-based leadership. In the past, in my old days, leaders tried to fix people. They tried to figure out what's your weakness, what do you need to develop, what are your development opportunities, how do I make you a better person, right? The conventional wisdom is you don't do that. You're not going to fix anybody. You're not going to change anybody, to be honest. Figure out what people are good at when you're in your team. Look at people's strengths and figure out, how do I bring out the best in each person? How do I make them work together so that overall the team is working effectively? That's strengths-based leadership. And I'm proud to say that I brought that partly to Amazon. When I went to Amazon, it was very much the old school way. Within my team, I brought this strengths-based leadership approach. It worked beautifully. We operated as a team, running on all cylinders. And then after we got a bit of negative press at Amazon, then Amazon as a whole, not because of me, but they went to some consultants who told them, you should do this. And they did it, and it's changed the way that Amazon functions as a company. They now are a strengths-based company. So those are my 3 pieces of advice: authenticity, emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and strengths-based leadership.
I adore those. Thank you so much for sharing. I think I love the fact that they're also more self-awareness based, because I think if you don't have that, it's really hard to not only support yourself and carry yourself and progress, but also, yeah, absolutely, it will impact the way that you lead. And I think it's great that we think, work is work and we're all very professional, and maintaining that work face is very imperative, but also without that emotional intelligence and processing the fact that people are also human, it can sometimes be quite difficult. People, like we spoke about at the start, life happens. And I think understanding that and understanding people have peaks and troughs, and people's beings and their work, it will evolve over time. I think it's very important to leadership. So it's beautiful to hear somebody with so much incredible experience like yourself to also vocalize that. So thank you. So again, I know we've mentioned many beautiful big names that you've worked with. So having worked with massive organizations, Meta, Amazon, American Express, how do you see financial technologies changing in the payment space and bringing better access to our world of commerce?
That's a huge question that we could talk about for about an hour. So I'll have to give you a quick answer, and that is one of the things, the big mega trend that I'm seeing is embedded finance and embedded commerce. And what I'm seeing in all of the commerce companies, from retail to e-com to marketplaces to social, they're all looking to embed finance within their customer journey so they can really offer the right financial services to the customer when the customer actually needs it and wants it, right? That's embedded finance. But what I'm also seeing is embedded commerce. So a lot of the fintech companies are saying, hey, actually, We have a relationship with our customers. We work with we know our customers. The customers have their money with us. They have a wallet with us, etc. So why don't we embed commerce within the customer journey? And you're now seeing that happen with the likes of Revolut and Klarna, Square, PayPal, etc. So those types of companies are embedding commerce. So what I'm seeing overall is this massive convergence between the two. I think you're going to find it more and more difficult to distinguish, but there will still be distinct roles that each part will play. So if you look at the Apple and Goldman Sachs partnership, for example, again, this is an unconventional, not normal partnership, but Goldman Sachs sees the value in working with Apple. And Apple doesn't really want to hold the money, to hold the deposits. They don't really want to be regulated as a financial services company, but they want to be able to offer financial services to their customers. So they're coming together in this unconventional partnership. So my prediction is that you're going to see more and more convergence. And my recommendation is try not to be too worried about cannibalization of your own business and industry. Try to be open-minded about partnerships. That's where we're all going to succeed.
That's very interesting. Thank you. I think the Apple partnership is something that's on everyone's tongue at the moment, especially with the statistics that came out this week about the millions and near $1 billion that went into the savings account as well. I think it is incredible. And that interoperability, I think it also adds like consumer assurance, because I think sometimes people have certain conceptions, whether it's towards fintech products or towards traditional banks or challenger banks, whatever it may be, and they're unsure. So I think seeing big brand names like Apple, for instance, also then moving into these like different financial products, it does offer a level of, oh my God, if they're doing it and everything I own belongs to them, my phone, my laptop, it does add a level of confidence, which I think is incredible. But one thing I wanted to ask from what you were saying, which was so interesting, was, do you think that this sort of interconnectivity will help close the gap in the unbanked or underbanked at any point?
Yes. I mean, we're constantly looking for ways of helping the underbanked. I think, if you look at something like M-Pesa in South Africa or in Kenya, that's a great example of where a mobile phone company came together with it was a Safari and Vodacom trying to create a wallet for customers to be, and it's worked. It's really enabled commerce within Kenya, and that's happening more and more around the world. From Grab in Southeast Asia, we still are challenged in UK, to be honest, because we're such a cards-dominated society. And we need to find more ways of reaching the underbanked, but I have no doubt that we'll find the right solutions through the right partnerships.
Amazing, thank you. So now I'm on to my last question. Sadly, I always get sad when it comes to the end of my time with people. But I wanted to ask, what is the best work-related advice that you've ever received that you would like to share with other women, particularly?
Okay, well, this could go for women and men, but I'll give the female nuance as well. So the best advice I've ever been given was that it's the questions, not the answers, that are important. And what I found as a female, women tend to want to overperform. We almost feel like we have to be knowledgeable and we have to show our knowledge to be valuable. And so when I was at American Express, I was responsible for 25 countries, partnerships, 25 countries for airline co-brand card partnerships. And I would walk into every country and talk to them about, like, here's the playbook. This is what you do. This is how you do it. And I wanted to do it for them. And finally, I got some advice from my boss. They said, Laura, you're great. Everyone knows you're great. You know what you're talking about. And you have all the answers. But it's not the answers, it's the questions. What the country managers need from you, they need you to be a sounding board. And it's so much more powerful to let them come up with their own answers. And you just show up Be confident in who you are. Be confident in your knowledge and your skills. Don't feel like you have to impress them or dazzle them. Just show up and listen. Ask a few questions. They'll come up with the right answers. And that freed me up. I was like, oh my God, revelation. So I don't have to prepare for hours and weeks in advance. I just show up and ask questions. It's made my life better and theirs as well.
I love that. Thank you. I think what's also really beautiful about it is the fact that I think where you touched on the fact that women always want to prove that they have the knowledge and they are worthy of being in the room. Sometimes you can overwork yourself and you end up burning yourself out. So taking that ideology will literally save you oodles of time of second guessing yourself and so much of your energy. So that's a wonderful practice to put into place. So thank you so much.